What is up, guys? Welcome back to another Comic Cave creator interview. We're here with Andrew MacLean. Thank you so very much for joining us tonight. Let's just start it off with what are you currently working on?
Well, thanks for having me on, first of all. I right now I'm working on, here, I'll show you. I'm sitting on my desk. I'm working on my Kaiju comic, Sarlagon.
Oh my god. We love kaijus.
I got a few thousand more dots to put on that page, but yeah, I'm working on this Kaiju comic. It's a short thing. It's something I wanted to do for a number of years, and just working on Head Lopper has taken up all my time. So I was feeling a little burnt out at the end of volume 4 of Head Lopper. So I was like, it's a good time to do that little passion project I wanted to do for a while. So I've been chipping away at that for a little bit.
With the Head Lopper finishing up, are we gonna get like an absolute or like a completed edition of it?
There's more Head Lopper coming, like a lot more. But I wanted to step away from it and kind of plan it all out, rather than I was just like, the deadlines were just so constant. I do want to do some like large hardcovers. I've been trying to figure out like where I want to do more Head Lopper, just how big should each one be? I mean, that's part of trying to like plan out the kind of big picture for Head Lopper. So there's no official plans for it right now, but it's something that I kind of have in mind. It's something that people ask about like all the time. They're like, "Oh, where's the hardcover? What are you waiting for?" And I just haven't just nailed it down yet.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I think you would definitely sell 3 of like the absolute editions. Man, I'd love to see that those originals.
And is the one that you're working on right now going to be distributed through Image, or is that something you're doing independently?
I'm also still figuring that out. It's something that I wanted to crowdsource, and then maybe have someone else do the distribution on it. That's kind of like crowdsourcing has become such a different kind of animal than it, you know, I started Head Lopper crowdsourcing, but it's so different now. It's got its own kind of following. It's like its own market, it seems. And so I wanted to kind of dabble in that and give that a shot, see how that goes. I just did a campaign for a book with my buddy Alexis called Death Fight Forever. So we funded that, and I wanted to do one that I'm drawing as well. So that's the plan, but I am talking with some other publishers about maybe having them do the like store distribution, like outside of crowdsourcing. So, you know, I still got to iron that out as well, but that's the plan so far.
Nice. Was it pretty seamless, I guess, or easy to do the Death Fight Forever crowdfunding, or what was your experience with that?
It was pretty easy. It took just a lot of work up front. My wife Erin runs Laser Wolf Attack and is my editor on Head Lopper, so she had a lot of heavy lifting to do with like all the, you know, it's best to do all your budgeting and all that stuff up front, and then we had to figure out all the, you know, all the different packages and like run all these scenarios. That's the heavy lifting. But once that's done and you hit go on the campaign, it's pretty easy. Beyond that, you know, it's just if you don't do that like work up front and have good budgets and timelines and stuff, you're just gonna screw yourself in the long run. So we tried to be really diligent about that up front. But it was hard because we also wanted to get out in front of like the holiday season. Like comic book stores traditionally don't do very well during, you know, once December hits, everyone's shopping for everyone but themselves. So we tried to squeeze that up front, but it gave us a good deadline to kind of shoot for too.
Nice. Not to get too off track, but I saw on Laser Wolf Attack, the website I was looking today, see if I need any more shirts. But I saw Blue Agatha head, a puppet. Is that coming back, man? That thing is so cool.
Do more out there. I've been thinking about tracking some down too. It's one of those things that, you know, we didn't produce ourselves. The Skeleton Crew Studios produced that. And it was one of those things that you just like, you can't believe exists at all, like a Agatha puppet. But at the same time, I'm like, at the time you're like, how many people are going to buy a puppet though? So it's hard to guess how many you should actually make, but you know, people have loved it. It's really funny. Not many people got into the puppet.
I've never bought a puppet, but I would.
Actually, now that you said it, I want one too. And that was with Headlopper, man. And one of the things that I really liked was how you just kind of threw us into this world, letting us figure it out for ourselves. You know, the whole world started kind of building around as we read deeper into it, which I think is something that is almost like a lost art. Sometimes a lot of creators want to just build a world and start everything from scratch. So I think what you did was really brilliant, because I miss that style where it's just like, here's the world, here's the already ongoing adventure, and then we meet everyone as we go along. What were some of the influences that you had when creating this, or what was it that kind of kicked you like, oh yeah, that's the story I want to tell?
I mean, it's kind of twofold. It's first, I didn't know how much I'd get to make. I thought when I first started, I was like, oh, if I only make, you know, I wasn't planning on doing like thousands of pages of story, whatever. I was thinking, if I do 20 pages of story and that's it, what's the best way to have fun right away? So that was part of it, was just being practical. Like, how do I just jump into this story and have fun? Like, how do I give people, you know, what's cool about this idea right away? So it was partially practical, and partially the same thing that you're saying. Like, it's like, oh, this tendency when you're starting a story, of course, to start at the beginning. But the beginning of any story is usually like slow and boring, like an origin story. It's like you got to build up to what the whole point is, you know, for the long run. And so to think, it's like, well, how do you, what's cool about the idea? What's fun about the idea? And can we just get to that right away? So Headlopper starts, and he's already got Agatha. Eventually we learn, you know, we see where he gets Agatha, and there's much more to learn about that. But the actual, like, you know, where does Agatha come from? What is Norval's past and stuff? That's not really what's like cool about Headlopper. It's about Norval and Agatha, you know, bickering and fighting together and killing a bunch of monsters. So it's like, let's just kick in the door and get this thing started. Get as quickly as you can to what's fun and cool as possible. And I don't know, if I had thought a whole heck of a lot about it when I got started, maybe I wouldn't have done it, but it was like, let's just do this. Let's just have fun and get going, you know?
Dude, yeah, it is fun, man. It was a joy to pick up. We picked up a copy from you, and then sat down immediately. I was like, man, I need the rest of these things. This thing's just way too much fun. I love the style in it. I love your style of storytelling. It was just really...
Appreciate it.
Who were some of your influences?
I mean, getting started in Headlopper, I was definitely looking at a lot of like Hellboy, like Mike Mignola stuff, Gabriel Ba on like Umbrella Academy, and then later some PRD things, Guy Davis. Like, it was finding that all those kind of artists who were drawing for companies like, you know, like Dark Horse at the time, they were new to me, these styles. Like, I had gotten so used to seeing comics just be kind of superheroes, big two kind of normal styles, kind of house style stuff. I thought that's just what comics were in general. And then when I went to college and I moved to a bigger city and had more access to other comics and everything, I started to find comics that were drawn in kind of cartoony ways or just different ways. And that really opened my mind and got me started. And so when I started Headlopper, that was a lot of the stuff I was looking at, that, and like, you know, I'd fallen in love with kind of brushy styles like Paul Pope and Toby Cypress. But over time, I started to get into, you know, more things like my favorite artists now are like Jack Kirby, Mobius, the Hernandez brothers from Love and Rockets, like Miyazaki. Like, I got into, more recently even, I've gotten into like kind of like 70s manga, like older manga. I had read like Miyazaki's Nausicaa, and then it just went down this like rabbit hole of reading kind of older manga, and that's been a pretty big focus since then.
Man, and when you talk about the big two, I mean, you also did a Wonder Woman story, right, for the Black and Gold series. Like, how does that, man? Like, your style was so well adapted to that. It was incredible. How did you get that opportunity? Who did you talk to, or did they reach out to you?
I've done like some cover work for DC a few times, and I think often, you know, for big two stuff, I've done just a handful, like usually shorter stories like that for them. I think there are editors there who say like Headlopper or something, but know that there's not a lot of, it's not your typical art style for DC. So when something like that came up, where it's like a short story from an anthology, they seem to get a little bit more adventurous, and so they were like, look, we can give, you know, 8 pages to maybe not a whole series to this guy, but we can give 8 pages to this guy. And they really gave me free reign. They were just like, here's the theme is, you know, black and gold, but that's it, like just run with it. And so the obvious choice, of course, is to use those colors. And beyond that, story-wise, I had just been really fascinated with a whole bunch of documentaries about cults and stuff. And so I wanted to both try to draw a kind of like cosmic Wonder Woman, but also tell a story about crazy cults and stuff. And so I just blended those couple ideas together. But yeah, they just came to me and they're like, hey, we got this anthology and you can do like whatever you want. And it was a really cool experience. I mean, I got to do a Batman cover at one point, and those things are things I just never thought possible. Even when I started to like draw comics, I was like, yeah, they'll never want, you know, they'll never want my art style for big two stuff, but I've gotten to do a little bit of it.
Because you did a Thor too, right?
Yeah, I think I did like 2 pages of Thor. And oddly enough, I get like a very like, I still get like very small checks. I drew 2 pages, and they have some kind of deal where you earn like very tiny decimals of royalties, and every year I'll still get a check for like $3.50 or something for drawing 2 pages. Yeah.
That's a comic.
Yeah, that was cool though. It was hard. I found that even though it was 2 pages, I had to draw. It was like my 2 pages were Loki talking to an ice giant, and there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of panels per page. And so I'm trying to draw like to scale. One character is like an ant, and the other is like a human size, you know, to scale. And so trying to squeeze in a page, you know, like if I'm drawing the giant at like 3 inches to scale, Loki has to be a speck, but they're both talking. So it's like, how do you draw these things so people know what are going on? But it was a cool challenge.
Well, hey, you can always tell them I'm ready for Ant-Man now.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. Nice. Andrew, I was wondering when you first started out drawing and kind of like learning the craft, were you looking at other things and trying to like copy them? Like, how do you come to your style? Because it is unique. It doesn't look like, you know, a big two. It doesn't look like you're just looking at Superman and drawing like a copy.
Yeah. I think a style is kind of a slow thing to kind of work on over time. And so when I first decided I wanted to make comics, I had been drawing just to kind of like, you know, please myself. I like just have fun and just kind of like scratch a creative itch. And so I didn't mind the fact that when I was drawing for fun, I was trying to draw like Mike Mignola, like it was just a hobby. And so then when I was like, I think I want to make comics, I had done all this practice, you know, I didn't realize it was practice at the time, but I had done all this work that was kind of trying to draw like Mike. And so when I realized, all right, I'm going to need my own style, I can't just, you know, copy someone else's style. It was kind of frustrating because it felt like you had this thing in your head. You're like, this is how I draw now, but I really can't draw that way. And so I had to kind of really, even though at the time Mignola's work was my favorite work out there, you know, Hellboy was my favorite comic, I really had to kind of set it aside and stop looking at it, because I realized I need to have a wider, vocabulary. And so I really made it a point to, even though I loved it, really not read, Mike Mignola work for a really long time, and like force myself to go out and find new art that even if at first I didn't get, if I say, for example, I had heard, that, this Jack Kirby guy can draw pretty well, it was like, go out there and find out what's good about it. And so I really kind of like decided that I needed to, be a student, and slowly over time, I had to like, pick up bits and pieces from a wide variety of artists. And I do think that's important for, for people who want to be artists, is to, a comic book artist, is to consume a wide variety of stuff, so that you don't have, your art style, your voice isn't this kind of, this voice that's drawing from a very small pool. It's better to like draw from a whole lot of stuff. And it means reading a bunch of stuff you probably don't like, but at least you move through it, and you kind of, I had to make that conscious choice to absorb as much as I could, just so that I wouldn't look like other artists. But it's fun. Along the way, you learn a lot.
How does Mike Spicer come in to do colors on the first Headlopper stuff?
Yeah, so Mike and I at the time hadn't really done anything. Neither one of us had any kind of professional work. I was working with, I'm drawing a blank on what his name was, but I had worked on some other pitches that I had written and drawn and hired a colorist to do. Simon, his name's Simon Go, if I remember right. His screen name is Spider-Man Fan 2099 or something like that. I don't know. He still works. He's still a great colorist, but at one point he was too busy, and he knew Mike, and he was just like, "Hey, I don't have time to do this, but I know this guy Mike, and we have a similar coloring aesthetic." And this is 10 plus years ago, and at the time that was true, that they did color a lot alike. And so it was an easy pick for me. So I hired Mike to do, all the self-published Headlopper stuff. And then when we got picked up at Image, we continued to work together. And he's gone on to do all kinds of awesome stuff. It's been really, really great to we kind of came up together, neither one, we were both just doing self-published things for little to no money. And then luckily we both kind of were able to get our foot in the door and stay put. And now he seems to be inundated with work. He has all kinds of awesome gigs. So it's been really cool to see him, make it.
Definitely. Yeah. I've got nothing but good things to say about his color work. It's incredible.
I think he keeps getting better too. Like every time I see him work on a new artist, I'm impressed at his versatility. He just keeps going.
So did you always know you wanted to do comics, or did that come later?
It was like an on again, off again kind of dream. When I was a kid, when I was maybe early teens, I wanted to draw comics. When I grew up, and then I picked up a guitar and fell in love with playing heavy metal, in bands with my friends and everything. And so that was all I wanted to do. I like to draw still, but in terms of, a career or something, I was really shooting for, becoming a musician. And so when I first went to college, I went for art, and then I dropped out. And then when I went back to college, I went for music and was able to stick around long enough. But by the time I left college, I had started to find artists like Mike Mignola and Guy Robot and Guy Davis and whatnot, and I just had gotten so re-inspired by comics, and it was so hard to keep bands together.
Yeah, you could just do it yourself, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's part of how I became a writer too was just that idea that you can just do it all by yourself was just really intoxicating. You didn't have to sync up with anybody creatively or schedule wise. I could just do it. And that really kind of pushed me more and more towards focusing on comics. And it was a weird choice in my mid to late 20s to be like, wow, I just spent all this money on a music education. Am I really just gonna change gears? But I really wanted to do it, and so that's what I did.
What's on the playlist now when you sit down to do a Headlopper comic?
If I'm doing Headlopper, like my favorite metal bands are probably Soilwork and Symphony X. Symphony X is perpetually on any playlist, but definitely the Headlopper playlist. Like Symphony X, they like progressive power metal. Very like their songs are about like Greek and Roman mythology and all kinds of, it's about dragons and shit. So it's like the perfect, and also it sounds a lot like a film score, but heavy metal. So it's like the perfect kind of Headlopper, score. So I always listen to that. And like Blind Guardian and even like Master Plan I've gotten into more recently, which is a little bit of a cheesier kind of power metal. But definitely like hear progressive metal when I'm writing or drawing Headlopper.
Nice. Are you reading any comics at the moment?
No, not right now. I'm trying to think what the last thing I found that I can really only read one thing at a time. So if I've got a novel going, I've stopped reading comics. But I read what I just finished. I just read Kimandi and Jack Kirby's Kimandi. I'd never read that, so I just read that. And what else was I reading? I've been reading. I have one volume left in The Drifting Classroom by Katsuo Umetsu. It's like a 70s like horror manga. So I've been reading that. I've got one left. And then I just read this cool, it's by Tezuka. It's like a medical thriller. I'm trying to remember what it's called. Like Ode to Kirihito or something. I don't know. But it's like this is like disease that takes over this area, and people who get it are turning into like dog people, and like there's this doctor who's like trying to figure it out, and there's like, I don't know. It's one of the. It seemed like a cool comic to read, to just look at weird drawings of like people getting like a dog illness. It was like. But it was so smart. It was maybe and it was like, probably from like 74 or something. It was like the smartest, most like well-written and drawn book. I mean, they call him the, like the god of manga for a reason, I guess. But yeah, it was very cool. What are you guys reading?
Oh, dang.
Everything. Philadelphia is one of our favorites. Jason Sean Alexander.
Ice Cream Man.
Oh, yeah.
And the Children.
Yeah.
Nice.
Shoot, man. We're rereading Long Halloween, Batman.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I haven't read that one.
We actually working through the Ronin, Frank Miller.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we got that.
We got the artist gallery edition thing.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Oh, are they doing like a sequel to that or something?
On
Frank
Miller's
productions
that he just...
Yeah, I saw a cover that Frank drew, and someone I think the series artist on it inked it or whatever. It was pretty freaking cool. The guy can still draw. Like, it's really cool. Yeah. It's not my favorite book, but so far the sequel still looks cool.
Yeah. And then we've just been picking up a whole bunch of independent creator stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, we've gotten into Alex Zirit, Michael Anthony Catalan.
Oh yes, Space Knights.
Yeah.
It's honestly not too far off Space Riders, but a little more medieval. really cool book, and he's doing some interesting things with like formatting.
Oh,
So we dig that kind of stuff.
It's kind of like what you were saying, that sometimes you got to break away from the big two to kind of start looking at different styles and things like that. And plus, you know, man, this, you know, I'm sure you would understand, a lot of people, this is their business, you know, so we're really trying to get more people to read more comics. And if that means showing everyone an alternative, we want to do that too, you know, because there's more to than just Marvel and DC, you know, so.
Oh yeah. And sometimes like when you go, you know, hunting things down, you might find a few clunkers along the way, but it's worth like dabbling and just you know, taking a stab at it. If you like Space Knights and Space Riders, you might like it's called there's this comic called, I think it's called Blazar. I think that the dude's Instagram might actually be Blazar Cartoons or something like that. But I believe he self-publishes it, and it's Blazar, I think. But it's got that kind of like really kind of Space Riders, kind of like pulpy, like old school violent. It's badass. I think if you like that stuff, you'd like that too.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of that. Our homie Erwin Papa, he's got stuff coming out too. So, yeah, it's just been fun since we started kind of getting tired of some of the event stories that never really leading anywhere. We decided to take a break and start looking elsewhere, and it's been a lot of fun. It's like you said, you find some really good ones, some okay ones, but
some lemons.
But I mean, it's still at the end of the day, we want to support everyone. That's just our thing. You know, you never know. Plus, like you said, it also, you know, it might just be them in the middle of trying to find their style. And so, you know, like, shoot, man, who are we to discourage anyone? You know what I mean? We're like, yeah, man, keep it going. You never know. Hey, keep working, kid. One day you'll be the next Andrew MacLean, you know?
It's true. I mean, like, you know, if you look at the very earliest pages of Headlopper, it's very different from where, you know, it is now. It's like things just take a long time to kind of develop.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like even those Snarlagon pages you've been posting, like, they look different. It's still like absolutely you, but it's different.
Yeah, I'm using different tools on it. I'm using like gouache for like gray tones and stuff, and there's like a lot of stippling on it, like the little dots. I never really did that before, and even my inking tools on it are different. I'm using like a quill instead of a brush, but I also really wanted to kind of be a little like campy. Like I wanted to feel like a monster. It's like I wanted to feel like a rubber suit, you know? So I'm trying to draw a rubber suit rather than draw an actual monster. So in Headlopper, I'm trying to draw monsters, not rubber suits. You know what I mean? It's like there's a line somewhere, since I love rubber suit monsters so much, but I'm really focusing on trying to draw, even if I draw a car in this, trying to make it look like a miniature from like an old movie rather than like an actual car, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah,
it does. Yeah. And the more you tell us, the more we see it, like, oh snap, yeah. and so so do you use because I noticed, man, with your commissions, you're like, dang, some of the stuff I was like, whoa. Do you find those are kind of like a good tool? Is that where you test out a lot of your new stuff?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. Like I like to experiment, and and I don't do a lot of just drawing like for fun. I do like basically none. Like if I'm drawing, it's gonna be for a project or a commission or something like that. So yeah, exactly, those commissions, whether it's at a convention or at home, it's a good chance where it's just a one-off drawing to kind of experiment with different like styles or different tools or whatever. And so yeah, I'll let myself kind of play around a little bit on commissions so that I might pick up a new technique or practice one that then I can bring in and use on a book, or it might be like, that technique is something I should never do again. Sometimes you like how to do too much or overdo it. And so yeah, commissions are a really good place to kind of just like, you know, try out some new stuff without having to commit to it, you know, long term.
Nice, man. And from the business point, you know, as an artist, I know that you have your representative now with Felix. Did you feel like that brought in a different clientele, or did you feel like you got a larger following because of that, or how is that like from a business point of view as an artist and getting a representative to like?
Yeah, so yeah, I think it did bring in some different eyes. I had a art rep before him. I was with at a Step Arts. That's what Alexis was with as well. And Neil from At a Step, he retired. He just got out of the business. And so, you know, I think each kind of art dealer or, you know, representative probably has their own kind of fan base, their own following, as well as the artists. So the artists are bringing, you know, their kind of following to an art representative, but also vice versa. And like Felix has a really big, you know, roster, a really big, deep talent pool, you know, of people that he represents. And I think a lot of art collectors kind of keep an eye on what Felix is up to, as much as they, you know, are going to keep an eye on just their Instagram or something. And so I do think so. Yeah, I think a lot of, I'm guessing there's a handful of folks who were probably introduced to my work for the first time when I, you know, teamed up with Felix. And so I think that's a helpful thing for sure.
How's it been coming back to conventions?
It's it feels different, but it feels good. So I was doing so many of them at one point. You get used to seeing some of the same people, and you get in this kind of routine and headed back out there. Some people are back out there, but it also feels like I'm meeting a lot of new people, like just like fans. Like you see the same people every year sometimes, and some of them I haven't seen come back, but I feel like, I don't know, it's hard to describe. It feels different, but I'm not sure exactly why. It almost feels like there's like a new group of fans going to shows now. I mean, it was a few years, so it's not impossible. But it feels a little bit more normal, you know, for each show. But beyond that, I used to do so many conventions that it got to be the most, you know, social thing that I did. Like that was like, I got to know so many people on the road, that's, you know, my best friends or people I know from comics. So I would only see them at conventions. So, you know, having conventions get shut down was, you know, such a bummer. It means that like a lot of my favorite people I didn't see at all. And so for me, you know, getting back out there again means getting to see my friends again. But it's funny, I feel like everybody aged like 10 years, you know. nobody like wants to go back to conventions. They're all like, I'm freaking tired, man. I'm not doing conventions anymore. And I'm like, I feel the same. But if you don't do them, I'll just never see you again. Like that's the deal. It's, you know, it's the only time we leave our house. The rest of the year we're at the drawing table.
What's some words of advice you can give to an up and coming artist, like somebody who wants to get into the industry? And
I think there's a handful of things that people can do to get into the industry. I think first and foremost, they can, I think that people should make a small comic. If you haven't made much in the way of comics yet, don't try to bite off more than you can chew, and, you know, come, you know, knocking in the door and be like, I got this 10 volume, you know, series. It's my magnum opus. It's like, start with a 1-page comic, and then make a 2-page comic, and then a 3-page comic. Like, you know, like make an 8-pager and just print it, you know, make a 16-page comic, and kind of get some practice, and you can get a real feeling, a really satisfied feeling of completion. And you have something that you can print and take to, and then start going to conventions. Like, I think a convention is, you know, as much as social media, you know, is out there in front of the entire world, comic book conventions are the only places I can really think of that you can kind of like physically put yourself in the middle of the industry. Like if you're posting stuff online, you're just one voice in an ocean of voices. But when you go to a comic book convention, the people who are there, they're there because they like comics. They've even invested money to get a ticket to get in the door. Like you're really setting yourself up really well as a young creator to get out there, get a table. A lot of them are very affordable. Some of them are expensive, but a lot of them are really affordable. And bring if you've got a bookmark, like just bring a bookmark and give it away for free. Even if you're not like say making money or whatever, just kind of like get yourself out there and just put yourself in front of people. You'll make new friends. You'll meet people who have similar interests as you. And again, it's like one of the only places you can kind of just put yourself physically in the right spot with like-minded people. So make something small, and then just get out there, start doing shows, get a table. You won't regret it.
And with everything you've done, did you ever years back, did you ever have a sort of like, dang, I made it moment? Like, you like, man, I'm actually doing this. Like, yo, this is, when did that come about, or when did that happen for you?
There are moments. I'm not very good at celebrating my own successes so much. So like, it's easy to like, it's easy to have this like goal, and then by the time you achieve it, to not like take a moment to just celebrate it. But there are those moments, like when I got asked to do like a Batman cover. I was just like, there's this voice that was just like, you thought this would never in a million years happen, even as I was starting to like make comics like this. So there was a time where I was like, oh, if I just had a comic book, if I just made one comic book one time, you know, that would be all I would ever need. And over time, you know, you keep changing your goals or whatnot. But yeah, that time when I got asked to do a Batman cover, it was just so outside of the realm of possibility for like 99% of my life that when it happened, you're just like, wait, did they email the wrong person? What is this?
Oh man, that's good to hear, man. We always like hearing about people's stories like that, because it's everyone's different. Everyone has a different, you know, like that moment. So we were just always curious about some people. So.
No, for sure. Or even like when I got to make Head Lopper Volume 2. Like when I made Volume 1, I was like, wow, this is like a one-time thing. Like this won't happen again, you know. And then when I went to Image, and I was like, oh, I've got more story if you want. They're like, oh, you've got more? You know, keep making it. And I was just like, wow, I just got permission to just keep making it. You know, that was like, you know, it's easy like taking it one step at a time to keep feeling like, all right, like this is it. This is the last one. Like no one's gonna let me keep doing this. But you get, if you know, especially getting started, it's so many rejections. It's like, it's just, one of the things Headlopper came out of was I was doing a bunch of pitches. Like I'd do like 10 or 12 pages of a comic, you know, usually with another writer, and then we would send it out and we would just get rejections back. And I just had all this artwork that I had done that were just for pitches. And so they'd never become a printed thing. They never become a story or a book or anything. And it was really discouraging to see like that, to put in that much effort and like not even have a thing I could hold at the end. Like, yeah, I got rejected by these publishers, but I also don't have a book. Like these pages, this work, no one's gonna even see it. And so that was one of the things that pushed me towards making Headlopper. I was like, just make the thing, like fuck pitching, like just in publishing, like just make something and enjoy that. You know, and so that's what I did at the time. I forgot where I was going with that, but you get the point.
Yeah, preach it. That's cool. Some people need to hear that, man. You know, especially with the, like you said, it's such a big. There's a lot of people creating right now, which is a good time to be a comic fan right now. There's a lot of people creating, so I'm sure a lot of people getting those letters. So words like that, someone like.
I think everybody will get so many rejections like before they get started. And I think it's I think the advice I ended up giving myself as I was going through that phase was that I would give myself kind of permission to feel it, like this sucks. Like I just put in that effort and it's gonna go nowhere. And like let yourself feel it, because it is a real disappointing thing. But to try to turn that into a positive, I would tell myself like, you know what? Someday when I've like got somewhere where I'm happy with, I'll be able to think back, and this is just one more obstacle that I had to overcome. And so like I would just try to encourage myself like, oh, this is just making your personal story, your road a little bit like more interesting. It's just another speed bump instead of like, hey, I just like knocked it out of the park on the first try. You can tell yourself, no, I worked for it. And so I would really try to like, turn that, I'm not the first person to say, try to turn those negatives into positives and be like, it's totally cool, totally fine to be, to get rejected. Like you're gonna get rejected. It's just, use that as gas to, fill your tank and just keep pushing it forward.
That's so cool to hear, because like seeing Headlopper, it feels like you kind of just burst onto the scene like fully formed and like just like this guy out of nowhere. But to actually hear like there was struggle, he is human. Like,
and maybe that's the lesson too, is to realize that most people won't actually see your failures. If you failed, that means that you failed at the start. You know what I mean? Most people, you'll fail like trying to get started, and so no one sees those failures, and you can just use that as your own kind of personal growth thing. But yeah, like I don't know anyone who wasn't rejected 100 times first.
Nice. Just to pivot a bit, I would be upset if we didn't talk a little bit about Apocalyptica-girl.
Oh, sure.
How did that kind of come into existence?
Well, so I had been, like I mentioned, I had been doing a ton of pitches, and I had done enough of them that publishers started to recognize my work when it came in. They didn't give me any work, but they knew who I was. I had annoyed them enough that they'd remember. And so a couple of them started to be like, say things like, oh, so not this project, but but keep sending us stuff. Like we like it. And so I started to get on, my relationship with Dark Horse started to turn into that a little bit, where they would be like, no, not this one, but we would like to find one for you. And so eventually at the time they were doing, they were still doing Dark Horse Presents, which was like I think it came out quarterly, and it was an anthology. And so at some point they were like, look, like, we don't have anything for you, but this is like a low risk thing that you could do with us if you want to do an 8-page story. And so I did, and it was kind of like a tryout in a way. So I did an 8-page story in Dark Horse Presents, and got friendly with that editor. And somewhere in there, I don't know the timeline, I started to make Headlopper and self-publish it. And the editor was like, look, if you came to Dark Horse with a project that was, only 100 pages, so really short, and printed 6x9, so cheap to print, and also like black and white, so they didn't have to pay a colorist, and like, so basically, like, if you make it a really cheap thing for us to make, we can probably greenlight a project fairly easily, like, because it just minimizes risk for them. And so he's like, if you want to do Headlopper at 100 pages, you can do that. And I was 65 pages into Headlopper, and I knew it was going to be way too long to be 100 pages. So I had these couple other characters, which at the time was an early version of Arya and Jelly Beans from Apocalyptica-girl, but they didn't really have a story. I just kind of had a world in mind for them. And so I was like, look, I've got these other characters, and I can make sure that this story fits the format. And so I was like, here's an idea. a story idea for these characters, and I'll make it 100 pages. So it was kind of like Headlopper won't work, but I wanted to seize the opportunity, and so just came up with Apocalyptica-Girl almost on the spot. Like I wrote it like the earlier versions where she was kind of like a crazy cat lady who like I think she was gonna like it's gonna be like some kind of racing involved, some futuristic racing. But as I like worked out the ideas and things I actually wanted to draw, the story shifted and it became what it was and fit their parameters or whatever. So yeah, so I did that with them, and at the time I didn't think that black and white comics were selling very well, so I ended up coloring it myself as well. It was a big project, but it really got me started over there.
That's really cool to hear. I was actually kind of wondering why it was smaller, like because it's an interesting format. But
the first edition is 6x9. There's a hardcover now that's full size, but that was what it was, and I think it was just about cost. I mean, it was just cheaper to make a 6x9 book printed overseas, and if they didn't have to pay me or anybody else to color it or letter or whatever, it was going to be a pretty cheap book for them to make. They just had to wait for me to draw it, and then they just pay for printing. Like, not bad.
Right on.
Man, that's cool.
That's a good one.
It is. Yeah.
Where can people find you online, dude?
Social media, I really only use Instagram. It's just my name on there, Andrew MacLean, with no punctuation or anything. And then there's also my website is artofandrewmaclean.com. I also run with my wife Laser Wolf Attack, which is where we sell all of our like merchandise, like t-shirts and toys and books and things. So laserwolfattack.com and also Laser Wolf Attack on Instagram. Those are our kind of our homes for the internet and whatnot. And there's generally a pretty up-to-date calendar on artofandrewmaclean.com for all of my appearances for conventions and stuff, which we're just starting to kind of schedule now for the year.
Nice.
Awesome. We'll see you in Arizona.
Yeah, you're gonna be there. Nice. Awesome. Yeah, that's a month. It's on my birthday, if I remember right.
Oh, nice.
We'll bring you a birthday cake.
Yeah. or a bottle.
Or a bottle. What do you think?
What's that?
What's your alcoholic beverage?
I'm not too picky, but I usually go with like whiskeys. Whiskeys are really good. Yeah.
Whiskeys.
All right.
Send him whiskeys.
Bring him whiskeys to his table when you see him. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight, Andrew. We appreciate your time, and that was a lot of cool stuff to hear, and we can't wait to see you in this month in Arizona.
Oh yeah, sounds great. Thanks so much for having me, guys. This was fun.